If you've ever wondered what tense your children's book story should be written in, or what point of view you should narrate your book in, then this video is for you. Hi there, I'm Eevi, an award-winning children's author and ghostwriter over on eevijones.com and the creator of Children's Book University. I create videos specifically for children's authors, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my weekly videos. Something I get asked all the time is whether it would be best to write our stories in first person or third person, in the present tense or the past tense. What rules should we stick to? Whose suggestions should we follow? Because there are so many different opinions on this. These are some of the questions we are looking to answer in this video. First, we're going to look at the three main perspectives or point of views from which our book can be told or narrated in. And second, we're going to look at the different tenses we can write our stories in. And for each of these, we'll also look at examples, real life books that are selling well and that are loved by their little readers. I wanted to create a video that talks about both the point of view and the tense, simply because to me, those go hand in hand. A quick side note here that I wanted to make sure to mention. There are so many different opinions on this out there, on what tense to use for what age group and what point of view to use for what type of book. So much so that it made it quite hard for aspiring children's authors to see which of these guidelines they should be following. So this video is meant to help with just that. To me, it's always less about previously established rules and more about our individual stories and about what would be working best for our books. With that in mind, let's jump right in. The perspective from which a story is told is known as the point of view of the story. There are quite a few, and so we're going to take a look at the most common ones. The first person viewpoint is used when the narrator of the story is also the main character, who is essentially telling the story. The main character is using their own words and pronouns like I, me, myself, mine, us, our, and we. This viewpoint is often a straightforward telling of the story and can also be in the form of a letter or a diary. Now, the advantages here are that this first-person viewpoint gives our readers a personal account of the main character's thoughts and feelings, which in turn connects our little readers quickly to our main character, often because it makes them feel like they are right there with the main character. The disadvantage of using this point of view is that the story can only be told and viewed from the perspective of the narrator, who is always attached to the action, meaning the narrator will always have to be part of each scene, and so the word I is very frequently used here. Great examples for children's books written in first person are books like Happy Dreamer, Me and My Fear, and After the Fall, where one of the pages reads, I didn't look up, I didn't look down. I just kept climbing one step at a time. So the narration is told from the first person perspective. The second person viewpoint is used when the narrator or the person that is telling the story incorporates our little readers into the story by using the words you, your, or yours. The advantage here is that the story becomes very interactive because the narrator is directly talking to the reader. I love this way of storytelling because our readers essentially become part of our story. So this way of storytelling works especially well with children's books. But because the reader is being so actively involved here, one of the disadvantages is that it might be harder to develop side characters and subplots about these side characters. Great examples for children's books written in second person are books like Say Something, How to Grow a Dinosaur, and How to Babysit a Grandpa, where one of the pages reads, When you're back at home, let Grandpa shut his eyes while you get ready. So the narrator is directly addressing or speaking to the reader. The third person viewpoint actually has three main variations, and each of these variations provides our little readers with a slightly different point of view. 1, the single character point of view, 2, the multi or shifting character's point of view, and 3, the omniscient point of view. With all three of these third person point of view variations, the author uses a narrator to tell the story and uses words like he, she, it, they, or them. The Rabbit Listened is a wonderful example of a single character point of view. In the book, a line reads, In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit. So here the story's single character point of view is Taylor's throughout the story. With a multi or shifting character's point of view, the narrator switches back and forth between different characters' point of views and is less common for children's books. Instead, it's often used in books like thrillers, where it gives the reader the chance to see the story develop from different perspectives. which then in turn allows the tension to build when the reader knows something that the viewpoint character does not. One example I was able to find here for middle graders is the book Wonderland by Barbara O'Connor, where the narrator is switching back and forth between the book's two main characters. And finally, the omniscient point of view. This is the most flexible point of view in terms of storytelling, because here the narrator can see into everyone's mind and can go beyond the experiences and knowledge of the characters. The narrator knows and sees all. He sees all events and knows all the thoughts of all the characters. Here the reader doesn't really know any other character better than the other. This type of viewpoint is often used in fables and fairy tales. Other great examples for slightly older kids or younger adults even are books like Little Woman, Lord of the Flies, and The Raven Boys. All are written from an all-knowing, all-present point of view. Now that we have looked at some of the main perspectives or main points of views we can use for our children's books, let's add a second layer. And that layer is the tense our stories can be written in. Here we really just have three main options. 1, where we write our stories in the past tense. 2, where we write our story in the present tense. And 3, a combination of both, where we make use of the past and the present tense. Now, there are so many resources that say our children's books for certain ages have to be written a certain way in a certain tense. So I wanted to create something visual to show that there really are no such hard set rules, that there are successful, popular books in each of these categories, and that sometimes things overlap and aren't as clear-cut as others may say. So this right here is a table I put together that shows the first, second, and third points of views that we just went over, along with the past tense, the present tense, and an option where books use both the present and the past tense. For example, Peter Reynolds' book, Happy Dreamer, is written from the first-person perspective using the present tense, while his book, Say Something, is written from the second-person perspective using the present tense. Both books are absolutely wonderful books for about the same age group, and both are selling well, yet they are using different points of views. This table also debunks the fact that books for little kids should all be written in a certain tense. For example, the Little Blue Truck series, Giraffes Can't Dance, and The Rabbit Listened were all written in the past tense, while books like the Llama Llama series and The Invisible Boy were written in the present tense. I hope that with this way of presenting my deep dive, we can see that children's books are written using pretty much any point of view and any tense, and so debunking the belief that kids' books should all follow the same rules. Which tense or which point of view we are using for our story doesn't depend on hard set rules. What it does depend on is our story and what we as authors believe would work best with our story. There are so many different rules and opinions on this, but in the end, there is no one right way. Instead, there are common and less common ways. And so instead of looking at what others have to say about this, I always like to deep dive into actual children's books myself to see what's out there and to see how books that are doing well are written. So my first ninja tip is this. If we are not sure what voice we should be using for our beautiful children's book, something that always helps me is to look at books that are, 1, already out there, that are similar to what we want to write, 2, that are written for the same age group, and 3, that are doing well and selling well. And then looking at these books, we can look at what point of views and tense they have been using to see which of these options would work best for our own story. Whether that's books in our kids' rooms, books in a library, or books in a bookstore. Deep dives like this are really important, and if you can't go to a bookstore or library, an amazing way to do this type of research is to find a similar book on Amazon and then go over to YouTube and search for read-along videos of that same book over there. I do this all the time, and that way I can experience the book in its entirety without having to go to a bookstore. But getting back to our own story and deciding which point of view and which tense to use, we could even go so far as to write our story from a few different perspectives and try to see what it would look like in the present tense and in the past tense. I love doing that with my stories as well, just to see which of these options would work best. It's all about being open to experimenting and trying new things. The key to this is this, which is also my second ninja tip for you. Once we have made a decision on what voice and tense to use, it's important to stick to this throughout our story. During my one-on-one feedback sessions, I often remind my students and clients to stay consistent throughout their story, meaning once they have decided to use a certain point of view or a certain tense, then they should try to stick to that for the entirety of their story. Now, that being said, oftentimes there is some overlap. For example, while the book After the Fall is written mostly in the past tense and from the first person perspective, on the very last pages, the story switches to the present tense and to a second person point of view. And so while the author switched both the point of view and the tense, he did so intentionally. He did so on purpose. So as long as we make these switches intentionally and they don't happen by accident, but are part of the storytelling, then such a switch is absolutely okay. For example, some of the reasons for switching our tense or our point of view could be if there's a story within a story. Bad Guys by Aaron Bleeby, for example, uses the present tense to tell the main part of the story, while the little snippets that talk about the bad guys are written mostly in the past tense. Or we may switch for emphasis. Here, After the Fall by Dan Santet is a great example where he switches both the tense and the point of view at the end of the book to really get the attention of his little readers. It's subtle, yet works so well. So as long as this kind of switch serves a purpose and happens on purpose, and not because we simply forgot to stick to the decision we have previously made, making this kind of change is absolutely okay. Something we can do to train our brain is to pay attention to what voice and tense other books are written in. What perspective is the author using? Does the choice impact the way the story may be affecting the reader? Would there perhaps be a more effective way of telling the story? Asking ourselves these types of questions whenever we are reading a children's book will help us make that decision for our own story. Because while there is no one rule or one way that would apply to every book, there is a good, better, and best way for our own story. So I hope that with this video, you'll be able to decide on that best way for your own book. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. It really encourages me to keep making free videos for you just like this one. Here's to finding the best voice for your beautiful children's book. Bye!